Bring in the new beef, put the other beef on the shelf, at least momentarily. Look.
Yeah.
This was not the plan to have 3 different starting left tackles, and none of which because of injury. Although you could argue Wanya Morris is somewhat because of injury. But, going to be on a third left tackle, and if you really want to get technical about it, a fourth, because Joe Tooney technically played left tackle for him this year. So, the Chiefs are basically like Oprah handing out a car. Just everybody gets one, and we're just going to see what happens.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
5 Things to Watch is brought to you by Batchelder Family Farms. You can now order Batchelder's fresh farm-raised products online in just a few clicks. You can also find their bison at the Overland Park Farmers Market and the River Market on Saturdays, where they sell their pasture-raised beef and bison, jerky, and eggs. Finally, you can visit their farm store for the freshest cuts and other locally sourced products Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 20810 South Prospect Avenue in Belton, Missouri. Batchelder Family Farms. I am here as always with my friend Matthew Lane getting this thing kicked off. What's up, Lane?
We're not carrying this on anywhere, are we?
No, probably not after this week. I'm good after this, I think.
I'm doing great. We have one more good football time for a Chiefs game before 3 weeks of 1:00 games. So revel in this glorious time that we have one more time before a long stretch of the worst time to play a football game.
Yeah, a lot of early season. I don't know. I don't know if I love the night games that much because post game show starting at 11:30 or 12:30 your time or whatever it's going to be.
Get younger.
I guess that's the case. I don't like it. I don't like having to wait all day for a Chiefs game either. It's not fun for me. I like actually to get things over with early. I like a noon slate so we can get get the game over with and move on personally. But that's just my opinion. This game will not be played at noon. We will have to wait all day for it. It is the Chiefs versus the Chargers. It is part 2. It is a game that very much decides the fate of the AFC West. If the Chargers have any hope of catching the Chiefs, they won't. But if they have any hope, they have to win this game. Kansas City Chiefs are, in a battle for the 1 seed right now, and this is one of their biggest challenges remaining on their schedule. One of the things that we wanted to talk about on this week is, the Chiefs against zone coverage. Maddie, I know you talked and you kind of alluded to it a little bit on the lab this week. The Chiefs have had their struggles against zone coverage this year.
They really have. And this is crazy because in years past, that has been what the Chiefs have dominated. And a lot of that has been because Travis Kelce's been unstoppable versus zone, the mind meld between him and Patrick Mahomes, where, they just know where each other are going to be or what they're thinking. It's always worked. And this year, it's still there a little bit. But what happens now is Kelce catches a 5-yard route in a hole in zone coverage, and it's a 5-yard gain. That's it. That's the end of the play. They're not getting anything extra out of it. And then you start looking at the other receivers, and it's just nobody besides DeAndre Hopkins is really doing well against zones. Not to go through all of the numbers, but you look at Travis Kelce, you look at Xavier Worthy, if you look at Justin Watson, these guys are all below the league average in yards per route run versus zone coverage. The only player on the Chiefs that is above is DeAndre Hopkins. So they have struggled quite a bit to move the ball versus zone coverage, and now you're going up against a Chargers defense that plays a ton of zone coverage. But it's not just that they do it exceptionally well. It's kind of like those Bills defenses of the years past where it's, what coverages you're going to get. You have a pretty good idea what menu they're picking from. They just play it so well. They execute it. They communicate. They're all on the same page that all those windows get really tight. And when you're not clicking, when you don't have guys consistently finding those open spots and making plays, it can make the offense look a little sluggish throughout the game.
Yeah, and I think what's perplexing and something, I think about a Juju Smith-Schuster, who's a guy that has done really well against zone coverage for this team historically. And he's got that chemistry built up with Patrick Mahomes. He in the past has seen things the way that, that Mahomes has seen it. Travis Kelce even alluded a little bit on about the maybe inconsistencies in the, and what Patrick and Kelce are seeing, and so you look at that, you think they have the building blocks to do it. It's just a matter of them getting more consistency there has been so much unsettled at the receiver position all season where, DeAndre Hopkins wasn't here for the first half of the season. Juju Smith-Schuster joined the team, came in and became a critical factor for a couple of games, then got hurt. You've had so much unsettled here that hopefully, you see this team start to kind of pick things up, start to get things going here. We'll see. We'll see if this team is able to kind of try to find some consistency there. I just hope that, like the December is the time that they peak at the right time with it, and like, I think you're right. Like, I think, consistency against zone coverage is probably going to be something that's pretty important here.
Well, and a big part of it is not just finding the open spots, but you got to make stuff happen once you do, right? And so in the years past, the Chiefs have always been towards the top of the league in yards after the catch. And I think they still are in terms of overall volume this year. They still are a pretty heavily they're heavily sliding to the yak side versus like downfield or like air yard side of it. But they're not creating a ton of extra yards after the catch beyond expectation. They're not making guys miss. They are not turning 5-yard gains into 15-yard gains. The only time they're really picking up yak is when it's part of the design of the play rather than catching it and transitioning it directly to that. And that's an area of the game where they definitely miss Rashee Rice or a guy like Tyreek Hill they had in the past. They don't have someone to and even Travis Kelce, like prime Travis Kelce, they don't have someone to just flip the ball to, and he's going to make guys miss. For as good or as fast as Xavier Worthy is, that's not his game. He really does struggle to make guys miss in the open field when he's not just outrunning their angles. Mecole Hardman might be their best option for that, but they really don't like to use him much of a wide receiver. So they aren't producing, I don't want to say big or explosive plays. They're just not even producing like yards after the catch when they are finding these holes in zone coverage. So it becomes very much a nickel and dime kind of offense to get them down the field throughout the passing game, which isn't bad. You just have to be on point the entire game. And when you have an offensive line that's giving up negative plays from time to time, when you have a wide receiver group that is still trying to get all of their footing underneath them and get on the same page with their quarterback, you don't always have that perfect execution like we saw in 2022. So this is a big challenge for them. We've seen teams challenge this team in man-to-man coverage recently, and I think they're coming up with some answers. Now they're going to probably be challenged to a lot of zone coverage, and it's going to be someone's going to have to step up besides Hopkins, I think.
The Chiefs are going to need someone to step up on the other side of the ball, too, in the secondary, because this defensive back group has, they lost a key player in Jalen Watson. Things have not been the same since. They've tried to give Najee Johnson an opportunity to take over that role, and he recently got benched for Joshua Williams, a cornerback that's played a lot of football for this team, but is not without his warts either. Maddie, who do you think gets the majority of snaps at the cornerback position between Najee Johnson, Joshua Williams, and hey, we'll throw Keith Taylor into the mix too?
It's good. I think it's got to be Joshua Williams. After what we've seen, right? Like he has put together, it's like 3/4 of the game, 3/4 of a game, but he put forth the best tape of any of these corners, not since Jalen Watson's injury. He put it out there on film this past week against the Raiders. It's not the biggest challenge, but you see what he does well. Like if I ask you, where does Keith Taylor win? If I ask you, where does Najee Johnson win? I don't know if you have a direct answer. I can say Joshua Williams, if I put him on the line of scrimmage, say play man coverage, go press that wide receiver in man coverage, you know what you're getting. You're going to have to deal with some issues in zone coverage, some lack of eye discipline, some blown assignments or where he's late, but you have an idea of where he does really excel. I don't know if you have this clear-cut idea where any of these other guys excel. So I do think that he has earned the ability to go out there and start until he loses the job. And like you just keep going that. That's what the Chiefs have done at tackle. Why not try it at cornerback right now? Ride the hot hand a little bit until he has lost the job to somebody else.
Yeah, and I think if you try to read between the tea leaves of why the Chiefs are in the situation that they're in with the cornerback position, why was Joshua Williams not getting opportunities? I think they trusted Najee Johnson to run what was called and run what was called more consistently. The problem was, hey, look, you're giving up some physical attributes. You're giving up some talent. There's a talent gap there, I think, between Williams and Johnson. And I think it showed, like teams were picking on him, targeting him, and he wasn't really able to, do much there. So I I think the Chiefs, trusted Najee Johnson to run what was called more. But ultimately, when you started to see some of the, busts and some of the inconsistencies there, well, what does that tell you? Okay, well, if we can't trust him to run what was called as consistently as we were hoping, as what we thought we were getting, let's go to the guy with the physical attributes that has some, ability, has played some really good stuff, really good football for us in previous years. So I think that's ultimately where this thing, how this thing unraveled. I don't think they're completely out on Najee Johnson necessarily. They're going to need him at some point during the season. They're going to probably need him at some point during the playoffs. That's just how this thing works. But I think Joshua Williams is the guy that winds up getting more of the snaps now.
Yeah, if there's confusion of why Joshua Williams wasn't getting these chances earlier on, go back and watch week 1 versus the Ravens, right? You can watch them catching a lot of passes, receivers catching passes in wide open space, and you're trying to figure out why they were so open. And I think you kind of start putting 2 to 2 together, and you watch where the corners were and stuff. Joshua Williams was taking bait, getting pulled out of his zone, was passing guys off when he shouldn't have, so on and so forth. And that's been a relatively consistent issue throughout his career. And I assume things like that will still pop up. We saw it on the touchdown in the Raiders game. He got caught staring at a different route and didn't get depth, and Brock Bowers got over the top of him. But then we also saw it on his pass breakup, where he was able to pass off somebody going vertical to Brian Cook in his zone and come back and break up a pass, trying to work underneath. So you can see the ups and the downs there. I think he's earned the chance because, like you said, they trusted Najee Johnson a little bit more to run their full index of coverages, and it still wasn't working. Not only were they not able to get this consistent, perfect communication and execution play in and play out, even when he was out there in coverage and the play call wasn't right and there wasn't a blown coverage, it wasn't always great coverage. And so you might as well put out the guy that is going to do, when he does it correctly, is going to do it better. Give him the go at this point. That's been Joshua Williams. And I think this matchup in particular is pretty good for that. Josh Palmer, big physical outside wide receiver. Quentin Johnston, he's fast, he's elusive, but he's an outside wide receiver. These are guys whose physical skill set might be, kind of imposing to some corners. Not Joshua Williams. He's big, he's long, he's strong, he's athletic, he's got fluidity in his hips. This is a kind of game where you want him out there, and I think you could probably live with some man coverage on the outside to help against Ladd McConkey in the slot a little bit more.
I think that's a great call. That's a great call for some of these outside receivers that this team's going to be facing. So, I think Joshua Williams gets the lion's share this week, and we'll just kind of see how things go from there. But this team's going to figure it out. They're going to find the right mix, and they'll go into the postseason with the best version of themselves that they can find. And I think it starts with the Joshua Williams experiment last week and starting this week. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
At GEHA, we stand behind our members because we were founded by members. So we build health plans with extra benefits like vision and dental coverage, plus hearing and fitness discounts. Visit GEHA.com. Enroll by December 9th at midnight Eastern Time.
5 things to watch here on KC Sports Network, presented by Batchelder Family Farms. And because this is Batchelder sponsored, we're going to be talking about some beef, and it's Beef of the Week. Tucker D. Franklin, Matt Verderam talking about the new tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Beef of the Week presented by our friends at Batchelder Family Farms. Go check them out at their farm store. You guys know the deal already. We love our friends at Batchelder Family Farms, from the KC Buffalo Company to everything that they got there. Go check them out at the Overland Park Farmers Market, the KC City Market. They having some great deals, so make sure to go check them out. The farm bundles as well. 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at their farm store at 2810 South Prospect Avenue in Belton, Missouri, Wednesday to Saturday. I think they just added some local honey out there at the farm store, too, I saw on Instagram. So they've got all kinds of stuff for you. Not just beef, but we got beef for you here at Beef of the Week on 5 Things. Always do. And look, Matt, it's becoming a weekly tradition, it seems like, for us to talk about what the hell is going on at left tackle. And DJ Humphries, he's going to have some big beef as a team. Bring in some fresh beef for Patrick Mahomes.
Bring in the new beef, put the other beef on the shelf, at least momentarily. Look.
Yeah.
This was not the plan to have 3 different starting left tackles, and none of which because of injury. Although you could argue one named Morris is somewhat because of injury. But, Going to be on a third left tackle, and if you really want to get technical about it, a fourth, because Joe Tooney technically played left tackle for him this year. So the Chiefs are basically like Oprah handing out a car. Just everybody gets one, and we're just going to see what happens. I don't see any world where DJ Humphries does not start this game on Sunday. I don't. I just think if you're the Chiefs, you have to plan. You have to give Mahomes the best chance to stay upright in this game. You cannot continue to just trot out guys who cannot protect him. It's honestly a miracle he hasn't been strip sacked more. It's a miracle he hasn't gotten hurt. You know, I've said this. I said it about Nick Bonino. I'm going to say it about Chason as well. Give credit to him. Both of those guys had opportunities that if they really wanted to just try to put Mahomes out of the game, they could have done it. I mean, they had free runs at him when he didn't know they were coming. I mean, there are plenty of guys in the league, okay, who would have put their helmet down and put a crown right in the small of his back and tried to just kill him. They're lucky. They're lucky it hasn't happened. I mean, because you see every week, I mean, it happens, man. Look at Al-Shaair with Houston, okay? Who, by the way, like just the most unrepentant tweet of all time. Like, you want me to be the villain? You wait till I get back on Christmas Day against Lamar Jackson. Awesome. But yeah, look, I think if you're the Chiefs, time for some new beef left tackle.
Yeah, they got to get some new beef over there. It's one of those things where we talked about this on that football show. I don't think, as you mentioned, wasn't really the plan to have DJ Humphries on this team, number one. And I don't know if it was really the plan to make him or want him to start this early in his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. But it's one of those situations where it's like, hey, buddy, we're going to need you to get ready. Look, if you need anything, here's Joe Tooney. He's a really smart guy. You both guys, you've played football for a very long time. You guys know what's going on. If you have any questions about terminology, he's right next to you. He'll help you figure it out. Just focus on the first 4 words of the play call. Ignore everything else, but we'll get you going. I think if it was a perfect world, the Chiefs would like to maybe wait a couple of games to get him to be fully back in physical condition and football playing shape. But Matt, it's not a perfect world. I don't know if you saw, I'm sure everyone saw on Friday when Patrick Mahomes saying it's the same effing move. But I look, tip my hat to Patrick Mahomes to like in the press conference on Wednesday to be like, yeah, I wasn't upset. What are you talking about? I was upset because we didn't score.
I feel like as Mahomes gets older, he's just going to get more and more just agitated on the field. Like, we never saw him get annoyed, and then Kadarius Toney decided to line up like he was playing corner, and that was the thing that finally Mahomes just couldn't take it anymore. But then, because he's who he is, he reined himself in the entire rest of the year. And then this year, like, Wanya Morris finally just broke him. He's like, oh, my God, like, just block him. Like, how hard is this? Like, just get a hand on him. I also thought it was interesting that Mahomes, and I'm paraphrasing, said something to the effect in the presser this week of saying, like, yeah, you know, DJ Humphrey, good player. Like, looking forward to get him in as soon as possible. It was like, yeah, I bet, man. I bet you do feel that way. I don't blame you.
We got to see some new beef. That's what our beef of the week is here. Not necessarily beef between two teams, but just some beef up front. That's going to do it for us here at Beef of the Week. From Matt Ferrer, I'm Tucker Frank. Let's go ahead and send it back for more 5 things.
Tucker Franklin, Matt Veram, That Football Show. Great stuff as always, gentlemen. Let's get to Benny Heisler with Benny's picks.
All right, Ken, thank you, brother. What's good, everybody? Welcome into this edition and this segment on 5 Things. My name is Ben Heisler. Good to be back again for Week 14 as we go over our picks for underdog for the Chargers and the Chiefs in Week 14. A little Sunday night affair. Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and the rest of the gang get together. I was about to say Al Michaels coming in on prime time, and then I realized, no, you idiot. It's Tirico and Collinsworth. You gotta remember what year it is. Sometimes the days and the weeks and the months all kind of float together. And I think a lot of you guys might understand that, especially if you're getting ready for towards the end of the year. But regardless, I've blabbled on too much. I do want to tell you, though, before we get started, that December is a very good opportunity to hop on board and check out everything that's going on over at Underdog Fantasy. If you've not used the promo code KCSN, make sure you go ahead and do so. New subscribers and new players can use that code. Score up to $1,000 in bonus cash on your first deposit. Plus, you get a Week 14 free pick or Justin Herbert to go higher than 0.5 total yards. That free pick can go right in as part of your overall plays this week. So again, promo code KCSN over at Underdog Fantasy, and let's make some pick'em plays. Let's start on the Chiefs side and go with DeAndre Hopkins. I'd like him to go higher than 3.5 receptions this week against the Chargers. It was nice to see him finally get things going last week again. Only finished with 4 receptions, but still had 90 yards. Seen him get targeted a bunch in the red zone lately as well. And also good to see him start to get his target share up a little bit more, as well as his route share. We're seeing him second on the Chiefs right now in first read share from Patrick Mahomes. He trails only Travis Kelce. That route share is about 63.5%. Target share just under 20% as well. And while I think a lot of us were looking at the Chiefs offense collectively last week and going, what the hell is going on? I think it was a positive to see Hopkins back in the mix, back and being targeted and getting himself open with some separation. This is also a Chargers defense that, for as good as they looked in the early portion of the season, they're starting to sputter a little bit. They've ranked in the bottom 9 in most points per reception, points per target. That's according to the good folks over at Fantasy Pros. So somebody like Hopkins, especially on the outside, if he can continue that separation, he's going to see more targets. We already saw the 9 from last week, and I expect him to clear that higher than 3.5 receptions for Kansas City here in Week 14. Now let's go over to the Chargers side and let's go to their quarterback, Justin Herbert. Obviously, I mentioned he's the free play candidate over at Underdog this week, and I certainly can't beat higher than 0.5 total yards. But I do think that there is another play that I like as well, and that is for him to go higher than 4.5 rushing attempts. He's cleared that number in 3 of his last 4 games. The lowest number in those 4 games was actually at 4. That's just 1 below the benchmark, and that was in the Week 12 game against the Ravens. We know that the Chiefs still have a very good defense. It's been tested a little bit more over the last month or so. But they still rank middle of the pack in rushing yards allowed to quarterbacks, but they are bottom 10 in rushing attempts to quarterback. Now, there's a couple different reasons for that. The Chiefs typically up late in a lot of these games, opposing quarterbacks looking to extend drives late in the game. But there's also the scenario in which Chiefs start to get some more pressure. Chargers are an improved offensive line, but it's still not a line that Kansas City has been afraid of attacking in the past. So there might be some more scrambles for Herbert, just trying to escape the pocket. We're not necessarily worried about yardage. We're just worried about attempts. Frankly, maybe there's a situation where he's sitting on 3, late in the game, and then the Chargers have a chance to either tie it or try to get something going late, and he just pads that number. So I like the 4.5. I wouldn't be surprised if this number eventually goes to 5.5, both at Underdog as well as some of these other books. But I like the 4.5, and I think it's a good number to jump on. So maybe it's a bit of a sweat, especially knowing that it's been right at 4 and 5, and I think one in that at 4-game stretch he had about 12. But I do think this is a number that he can clear against Kansas City, despite only 3 rushing attempts the last time out against the Chiefs. Finally, Gus Edwards. Like him to go higher than 9.5 rushing attempts this week. So we got 2 guys on the board, both for rushing attempts with Justin Herbert and now with Gus Edwards. He's not necessarily the Gus the Bus of old that we saw from his days in Baltimore. The numbers post-injury haven't been great, but with the injury to J.K. Dobbins, he's that de facto top back for the Chargers right now. And even though the Chiefs' run defense, as we've mentioned, has been very good this year, they've still hinted, in particular, Greg Roman during his interviews this week, really started to hint at the fact that they need to go back to more of this ground and pound running game. It opens up play action for Herbert. It allows them to take some more deep shots with guys like Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson. Will Dissly had a bad game last week, but that's another guy that's kind of opened up the offense for them in the passing game. Edwards, even though the projected numbers coming in haven't been great, we're looking at someone who's averaging just over 8.5 rushing attempts per game. But, last week in particular, 52% of the snaps, 64% of the run plays, we're just targeting him for volume. Okay. It might be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But that's okay. That doesn't matter. In theory, maybe he's able to sustain and that gets him more carries throughout the game. But I think they just want to establish it, and they want to set up more third and shorts for Herbert over the course of the game against Kansas City defense that they know is going to bring some pressure, and part of the other play from before. So I think he makes it to double-digit carries in this game. Again, I've already seen some books move this to 10.5. I think you're getting a good number at underdog at 9.5. So again, the card for this week, DeAndre Hopkins of the Kansas City Chiefs to go higher than 3.5 receptions on underdog. Justin Herbert to go higher than 4.5 rushing attempts, and then Gus Edwards higher than 9.5 rushing attempts. You get that card all together, right around 5 times your bet over at underdog. And again, do not forget that promo code KCSN. Claim your free pick. Get that first-time deposit. Offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. And those are your plays for Week 14. Hope it is a great week. Hopefully it's a Chiefs win and a terrific game. And those plays over on underdog cash for you. And with that, Kent, I'll send it back to you, man.
That's our guy, Ben Heisler. Benny's picks, as always. We close this show out with the fellas from Only Weird Games. Joshua Briscoe, Seth Kaiser, take it away.
Joshua Briscoe and Seth Kaiser with you here. 2/3 of Only Weird Games to pick us something that you need to know about heading into the Chiefs and Chargers. Seth, usually this is a pretty easy topic to broach, but in this instance, I do think you suggested this right before we got rolling here. Actually, we're not talking about Patrick Mahomes quite enough, and specifically Patrick Mahomes against the Chargers in round 1 in week 4. The Chiefs won that game 17-10, but it was a frustrating, unsettled game for Patrick Mahomes. What was bothering him in week 4? What will you be watching for in the rematch?
Biggest thing I'm going to be watching for week 4 was a weaker game from Mahomes than what we're used to seeing. The biggest thing was I charted 6 happy feet snaps from him. Now, the Chargers were getting pressure on other snaps, but not so much to justify the nature and the way he was bailing from clean pockets. They did a really good job with some movement up front. They were one of the first teams this year to really lean into a lot of stunts inside and then having a defensive end or a linebacker or someone loop around the edge, just hoping Mahomes bails out right. Because if he bails out right, then Jawan Taylor, he can't pick up that looper because it's too far. And they got multiple pressures against Mahomes that he created himself. That resulted in 3 missed shots, which is what I chart as a guy who's legitimately open that Mahomes should have seen within the progressions of the play that cost them something. And it's pretty rare for Mahomes to have 3 missed shots in a game. And so I'm going to keep an eye on him to see how he does against those pressure looks, to see if he's looking like he's trusting the O-line a little more, to see kind of just how he plays overall against a very good defense with a really good defensive coordinator.
Well, and we saw a few teams try to replicate that a little bit in the following weeks, right? At least a little more frequency of some of those defensive line motions. Has Mahomes gotten better with those from other teams, not the Jesse Minter-led version that the Chargers defense has, or have teams not done that as often in recent weeks? I don't think I've noticed it as much.
He's definitely been better overall against pressure in general, and especially some of that stunt stuff up front. He's waiting, generally speaking, not all the time, but generally speaking, he's waiting until there's actual pressure from it to move, which is basically the whole thing. Because that's the big thing. That's the danger with stunts, is if they're blocked up correctly, you're not engaged in a pass rush move. You're counting on the angle to win for you, and if they're just right there waiting for you, you are not in a position to really try anything, and you're blocked up. And so he's been trusting the interior specifically to block up those looks. And when he does, usually he's got time.
This is a little bit of an offshoot, but we've talked about Xavier Worthy. We've talked about Travis Kelce. It's been well covered both across Weird Games and this show here. But what are you hoping to see Mahomes do in terms of being the aggressor in this matchup this time?
I want to see him chuck the ball downfield to Xavier Worthy until I see it tried at least 4 or 5 times in a game. Worthy got them once on a huge play that arguably turned the entire tide of the game. I want to see more of it. I want to see them keep pushing the envelope with him because he's become a reliable part of the offense these last 3 weeks. Now let's get those shot plays in there because they have an opportunity to change the entire narrative around Worthy as a first-round pick. The last 3 weeks should have done that a little bit, seen him become a reliable contributor within the confines of the offense without even doing the thing he does best. So I want to see more and more of that.
Plenty to be excited about if you are able to wait all day for Sunday night.
All right, that was the fellas from Only Weird Games. That is 5 things to watch here on KC Sports Network, getting you ready for that Chiefs-Chargers game on Sunday Night Football. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting. We appreciate you. We love you. We'll catch you later.